Okay, everybody. Thank you and welcome to our first Life on Tap event for this year, which showcases our great alumni who've succeeded and done really well post-Christendom education, and they tell you a little bit on what their day-to-day life is, how they've done it, and they're open to answering questions. Thank you guys for coming. We had great food, and we'll definitely have more next time. So our first speaker, John Clark, is a author, political speechwriter, a book ghostwriter, and weekly blogger for the National Catholic Register. His first book, Who's Got You, reached #1 on the Amazon Kindle fatherhood category, which is pretty awesome. And he's written hundreds of articles for Catholic Digest, Seton Magazine, Homiletic Pastoral Review, and he is a Christendom College grad of 1992. Our second speaker, Matt Hadro, is the DC correspondent for the Catholic News Agency. He covered the Republican National Convention, the Democratic National Convention, and Pope Francis' visit in 2015. His work has been published in Crux, Real Clear Religion, and the National Catholic Register, along with Catholic News Agency. A little bit about CNA, they're the digital media arm of EWTN. So there's more beer in the back and more drinks. Those are at 21 if you brought your ID. Feel free to partake. And thank you so much for coming. I'm really excited for this great event. And think about some questions if you're really interested in journalism on how to kind of cut your learning curve to get farther at it after Christendom. So thanks, guys, and Mr. Clark.
Every time I come back to Christendom, I feel like I'm home again, so I appreciate that. They wanted me to give a little bit of my background. I don't know how far back you want me to go. I guess it all started when my dad met my mom, but I probably advanced on a little bit. When I was going to Christendom, I guess if somebody asked me where I learned to write, it would be right here. In fact, it might be right here because this used to be the library. Now, as much time as I maybe should have been in here and I wasn't, nevertheless, I got a lot of writing done right here. So it's kind of a coming home experience for me. So I wanted to major in political science and economics, but when I was here, I seem to have maybe more of an aptitude for writing than a lot of people. Now, what I didn't have was an aptitude for tests, okay? So have you guys ever had that feeling where you study really hard, like metaphysics, whatever, like you study really, really hard, and you walk in, you can't wait to get into class because you know that when the teacher hands you that test, you know it's an A, you know it. You've studied really, really hard. You know, you're like, I got it. I feel so good. Do you know that feeling? And if you know that, okay. I don't know that at all. Okay, so like I never did well on tests, okay? Papers, I have that feeling for papers. Okay, so when I handed something in, I was pretty sure it was gonna be an A. I loved the words. In fact, when I was certainly a sophomore, I actually helped seniors write their thesis, or theses. Is it theses? What's the plural? I helped with that, okay? So that was kind of fun for me. So I got to kind of be known on campus as somebody to talk to, like if you're having trouble with your paper. So that was pretty fun. I never really considered a job in writing after Christendom. I'm not really sure why, but what I can tell you is that the first time I saw the Wall Street Journal, I just knew I had to be a stockbroker. I don't know what that was, but it was. So I did that for about 20 years or so. So the way that I sort of set out professionally as a writer was that I, with my business partner, we developed something called morally responsible investing. At the time, there was something called socially responsible investing, and at the time, that would have been avoiding companies and, let's say, defense stocks or companies that tested shampoo on rabbits, things like that. So like socially responsible type things, right? It's true. So we had the idea of, well, wait a minute, why don't we take that same idea and do something we would call morally responsible investing? We'd screen out companies involved in abortion, all right, abortifacients, companies involved in pornography. We'd screen those out and manage money that way. So what we did was I wrote a lot to explain to people what that was. What is morally responsible investing? So that's really kind of how it all started. And so I had Catholic places contact me, like Latin Mass Magazine and the Homiletic and Pastoral Review. And they wanted to know more about it because their priests wanted to know how to advise investors. But that's essentially how things sort of started for me on a professional basis. From there, I was asked to expand those things a little bit. So I started writing a lot about the fatherhood category. So I have 9 children, and that seemed like a fairly natural thing for me to do, to write about fatherhood. So I started writing for Seton Home Study. Is anybody, maybe we have some Seton graduates, or we have some people that have seen my columns over the years in Seton Magazine. So I wrote that for about 10 years. I assembled those in a book called Who's Got You, and somewhat miraculously it went to #1, as Matt was kind enough to point out. I would have done it anyway, but it was nice of him to do it. So, so that was kind of it. So from there, I try to expand more towards apologetic topics. Okay? Now, here's what's interesting, is that, so I've written for Latin Mass, Catholic Exchange, all these different places. I've never written a column that I could not trace back somehow to Christendom College and what I learned. Not once. Not one column about fatherhood, nothing about apologetics. I could trace them all back. So you are learning, what you're learning here is going to help you for the rest of your life, and beyond that, it's going to help the world. Okay? So I'm going to have some ideas for you, and one of the points I'm going to make is that writing changes the world. Okay? Writing has prevented wars. Writing has won wars. Writing changes the world. Okay? What if Aristotle had never written anything? What if Aristotle's students never wrote down his class notes? Do we have scholasticism, right? I mean, so it's really important to think how important writing is. We sort of lose track of that. And I think right now we're in an age where people really like video. There's a lot of video content. I might even be working on some video content. But the written word is going to last. So what I want to do is, at this point, kind of go over to you just a few ideas I have for sort of the talk that I would have given myself if I were here. So this is what I think, this is specifically directed towards you as Christendom students, okay? The first one, I'm going to start off maybe with something that you might not have considered. It's learn to thrive on rejection, okay? And you're thinking, gosh, that's pretty depressing for the first one. You got free beer, okay? It can't all go well. It's funny, years ago when I was working as a stockbroker, my manager told me, he said, you know, when you're selling things, don't feel too bad, don't feel too depressed, because they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting your product. But then he said something else too, and this caused me some alarm because I had actually taken logic. Didn't do well, because that was all tests, I think. So he said, after saying that, he said, John, you are your product. And I thought, okay, but if they're rejecting my product and I'm my product, okay. So that made me feel a little uncomfortable. But here's the thing, when you're a writer, there's a trick, this is cool, there's a trick podium, that's cool. Well, I was the first one, right? We're trying this out on me. If it goes well, we'll keep doing this. But they really, one of the things as a writer is that when you submit something, it's you on a page. It really is you on a page. And the thing is that it means so much to you, like it's been your life. And maybe you've worked on that column or article or blog for a month, and you're like, it's perfect, I love it. Everyone, the whole world will like this. And somebody will say, who's the audience? Everyone will love it. And then you send it off, and about 3 or 4 weeks later, you start getting rejections. No, we don't like it, sorry. And by the way, there's some of them are a little bit mean. Like I one time wrote a manuscript defending Pope Francis's Evangelii Gaudium from a free market perspective. If you want to talk about that later, that's fine. I don't know really why you would, but you'd be happy to do it. The response I got back was, get this. Now, this is a book with 850 footnotes. 50 of them were from the Summa. It took me about 2 years to write. One of the responses was, we only publish serious books. So I thought, did I accidentally write a lighthearted scholastic tome? Was that it? So like sometimes they're not even like accurate in their, like, okay, it's bad or whatever, but I'm like, it's not a comedy. But the thing is, you have to learn, rejection is big. And it's not only It's not only rejection by publishers. When you're a blogger, here's the thing. You get some, what I would like to call mean tweets, for lack of my own term. So I was going to actually read you some of these. When I was preparing this, I put some like sort of mean comments together that I've actually gotten. And by the way, these are the ones that we printed. There are some that I couldn't read to you, okay? So I'll read you a few just for fun, okay? So we're talking about rejection and all that. So, okay, here's one. Could you try to be just a little more insulting and judgmental next time? I thought that was nice. Here we go. This is one I wrote about atheism. And by the way, atheists don't tend to be shy when they're responding to me. I don't know why. This was the response. Until you can show us what you're talking about, you're not talking about anything at all, and nobody should believe you. All right? Here's the next one. The reality is that there was no evidence for the existence of your God, so no reason to believe he exists. When you find some evidence, let me know. Then I'll prefer he did not exist. Until then, he's just a figment of your twisted imagination. Next one. I have to get some of what you're smoking. I think you yourself, John, and by the way, I can't remember what I wrote this about, but by the way, the backdrop for this is I sort of have the lighthearted column of the week. I'm not writing terribly serious things, sometimes apologetic, but sort of the lighthearted, take your kids to the park. That's about the level I'm writing at, right? Somebody said, I think you yourself, John, are missing the point of God and religion, and you don't know what a religious person is. Here's another one. I found the tone of this article negative and judgmental, not at all representative of our Catholic faith. Maybe you should get some training in ethics. And the funny thing is I had training in ethics, but that's another thing. Your closed mind will remain closed even in the face of overwhelming facts that we need Planned Parenthood. You can guess what I wrote that one about. You won't believe proven science, but you believe in a man in the sky and a devil in hell. You people are crazy, uninformed, and a threat to intelligent society. And last but not least, my favorite, and I just ran across this one. What the hell does this stupid article mean? I thought that was nice. There's never an analysis either, like, you're wrong, and here's why. They never really break down. I wish they would. And here's another thing, too, and I know this is maybe going to end up on YouTube. Here's a tip. If you're writing things in that are critical of me, sometimes they're so badly written, I literally don't know whether you like them or not. You have to spell it out. So maybe there should be like a star system, right? 1 star, okay. That's the main thing, because the reason I'm telling you that is, again, so many people stop writing because they feel depressed, like, I guess I'm not a good writer. That's not what that means. In fact, if I can find it, you guys like P.G. Woodhouse? Anybody? Yes? Do you want to get up here and talk about it? He says, now he wrote a book called, it's called Over 70, I believe. Anyway, he normally wrote fiction, right? But he wrote something sort of encapsulating his life, what he learned as a writer. So it's funny, he says the cross all young writers have to bear is that while they know that they are going to be spectacularly successful someday, they find it impossible to convince their nearest and dearest that they will ever amount to a row of beans. Okay? He goes on and talks about this and how it was so hard for him to just keep going. This is Woodhouse. Now, he got a lot of rejection slips, and he says that he could have wallpapered his house with the rejection slips. So there are a lot of people out there who their claim to fame is they rejected Woodhouse. Okay? That's not what you want to have done when you look back in your life, okay? So I'm just going to go through a few of these real quick, and we're going to leave some time for questions and answers here after Matt. So the second one is think clearly and write clearly. You're learning logic, okay? Writing right now is very, very bad, and one of the problems is people don't think clearly. Good writing is the product of good thinking. So if you're thinking clearly, you're going to write clearly. So pay attention in logic class. And by the way, learn the fallacies. That's a big deal. Like, I have written entire blogs on, here's the fallacies. Like, here's what the New York Times said about Planned Parenthood. Here's why it's wrong. And it's actually good. When you can call someone out, here's why you're incorrect. You're committing this fallacy. The next one is write every day. I talked to some people tonight, and based on some of the comments I heard, I think some of you have actually written more than I have, so that's really cool. But write every day. Write 300 to 500 words every day. At Christendom, that's kind of easy to do. Write more, okay? There's a lot of writing here, but that, again, that helps you. Next one, read every day, all right? Again, not much of an issue, but here's the thing. Read great writers. My wife is a huge fan of Jane Austen. Now, for years, I thought, I don't want to read her. I don't want to read Jane Austen, okay? So I picked up Jane Austen, maybe a year ago or something, and I started reading her, and I thought, oh my gosh, she's incredibly good. Now, her stories, I'm sorry to say, sometimes they're kind of about nothing. Sorry. That's the genius of it. She's such a good writer. She makes words dance. In terms of getting started, I would say start building a portfolio, all right? You're gonna have to write for free, all right? The way that I started as a speechwriter, this is actually how it all started. I thought I was pretty good with words. I've never thought I was a great speaker, and I wanted my words to get out, but I thought I wasn't the best way to do that, okay? So I also thought as conservatives we weren't getting our message out very well. Somebody was running for a fairly high office in the United States, and I said, here's the thing. You have no money. I have no resume. Let's work together. True story. And we did, and did pretty well. You want to start building a resume and building it now. You go into college, whether you're a freshman, senior, whatever, start sending in pieces. Send in things. Start sending in columns. That's one of the things you can do. I was first published at age 10. Okay? I'd like to think it was great. It wasn't. But start sending things in. Build a portfolio. Next thing is write to your strength. One of the things that you'll find out when you love words is you try to be really expansive and write about a lot of different things. Now, I write a lot about politics, but I only ghostwrite political things. I don't write anything under my own name politically. Why? Because I think that you want to have a brand. You want to have a voice. So if people are thinking, oh, John Clark, he seems to know something about fatherhood. I like him. I like what he's saying. That doesn't mean you can't write about something else, but my advice to you really is ghostwrite or write for somebody else. Matt and I were talking about this earlier. If I actually taught here, I won't because, well, one, someone would probably see my transcript, and that would be an issue. Two, I have no advanced degrees, but I really think that if I were to run a writing class, I would assign you. I would assign you a 12-page paper for tomorrow at 9 a.m. right now. Why? Because that's the world we live in. The thing is that the news cycle is so fast. Matt, I think we talked about this. The news cycle is so fast. You have to write fast. You have to write quickly. Okay. You don't really have the luxury of, I used to write papers the night before, and actually that helped me. People thought, oh, he's blowing this off. Well, I did pretty well. You've got to learn to write fast. That's big. And well. That's not easy. Okay. But that is something you'll need to do. If you want to be a writer, that's what you need to do. All right. And lastly, when I talk about this, I think that you have to look at writing as writing changes the world. Never forget that. That's not just something to say, something to quote in, the school paper. Write to change the world. If I didn't think I could change the world, I wouldn't be doing it. I'd be doing something else. Okay? It makes a big difference. As a political writer, if you write for someone who's really pro-life, he wins his seat. He gets the deciding vote. We have pro-life law. And much of the reason that people win and lose in America is speech writing. Right now, speech writing is very bad. Okay, you can go and get jobs being speech writers. Okay, that's something to work on, but it changes the world. Okay, and one last thing: fall in love with words and stay in love with words. Last Saturday, my wife and I went out for coffee, and I'm ghostwriting a book. I ordered 4 thesauruses, 4 that day. You got to fall in love with words. Now, maybe you don't need to have 4 thesauruses. Maybe you know all the words already and whatever. But you got to fall in love with words and get better all the time. I mean, I actually look back now and cringe at what I wrote 5 or 6 years ago. But that's actually really cool. I think 5 or 6 years from now, I'm going to look back today and cringe. And that's what you want. Think of it as the spiritual life. You're supposed to be progressing. You can't judge yourself today on the person you were 5 years ago, right? You're making progress, hopefully, right? It's kind of the same principle with writing. Always get better. Always get better. Ask yourself, how can I be better at this? And that is actually where critics can come in. How can I do better? Okay? All right. Thanks for coming. We'll do some Q&A after that.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, Matt Hadro, I write for Catholic News Agency. Public speaking, well, at least speaking into a microphone is not my strong suit, I guess you could say. So a little bit about myself. In 2005, when I came to Christendom, I kind of wanted to get into journalism, specifically print journalism. And so I thought, I need to probably go to a school where I can go into a specialized program and a specialized journalism program. From there, I'll be able to get the experience writing, doing radio interviews, et cetera, that I want, and from there land a real job in the journalism field. And so I thought, I'll go to Christendom for 1, maybe 2 years, get a good solid core education, and then transfer over into another school. And I didn't. I ultimately stayed around 4 years, and I'm really, really glad that I did that. One is that I made awesome friendships here at the school, and I think another one is that I had a great education. I'm really, really glad that I learned all that I did. The professors here were awesome, and I learned a lot about my faith. I learned just through theology class, through a lot of other classes. So how did liberal arts prepare me for what I'm doing now? Well, I should probably back up and just kind of explain first how I got here as a writer. So I obviously knew that I needed experience writing and getting published with a reputable publisher. And Tom took me under his wing freshman year, Mr. McFadden, and let me write weekly columns for the Chronicler. And so I wrote a weekly sports column for the Chronicler, and I also wrote for the Rambler. Sports writing was originally what I wanted to get into. And so I did that and had a lot of fun doing it. But I realized, I think come sophomore year, that I wanted to maybe try something a little more serious. And so I decided to get into political writing. And so I looked around for different nonprofits in Washington, D.C., and I applied to a few of them to be, over the summer after my sophomore year to get some writing experience. And one of them took me on, and so I went around with them, and I just covered different events in DC, covered different talks at think tanks, at the Cato Institute, at Heritage Foundation, and did a profile piece on a charter school in the city. I had a lot of actually good, solid experience in writing different kinds of stories. And that was good for me to, as John was just saying, to develop a portfolio, which is a really important thing if you're looking to get into professional writing. You want to be able to say to a potential employer, hey, I've been published here at this reputable outlet. And they can say, yeah, this is impressive, and someone clearly saw that you had the talent in you to write this good piece. And so from there, I had that one internship, and by my senior year, I took a semester off, and it was the fall of 2008. And I thought, I'll be gone just a semester, but I really want to spend this time in a productive manner. And so I got an internship at a place called the Media Research Center, which is this political nonprofit in the DC area. And there I was writing actual AP-style news stories for them, and it was during the fall of 2008. And I'm really grateful for that time because it was a really interesting time to be in journalism. My first day there, Lehman Brothers failed, the bank, the Wall Street bailouts started shortly after that. So there was a lot of very heated political debate over that. It was during the 2008 election, which was really kind of a watershed political election, in that it kind of was a game changer in how campaigns are run. And you had Sarah Palin was picked as vice presidential candidate. You had Obama, who was a very new, up-and-coming presidential candidate. So it was just a really, really interesting time to be in political journalism. And I had a lot of good, solid experience. I would say there, it was kind of like my current employer. I may not have had the previous experience reporting, but they throw you in the water and you learn how to swim. And so I had to, as an intern, be the only person there from this company covering events. And so it was a really good experience in terms of just being able to plan, okay, here's who I'm going to interview, here are the types of questions I'm gonna ask them. And so I would say those two internships were really important in terms of me establishing a foundation as a writer. I feel like Christendom, the education, gave me an awesome, solid foundation to, have a career in the humanities. But I think getting those internships on the side was really, really important in just kind of developing a portfolio and learning how to write in the specific style that I'm writing now. And so after I finished that internship, I came back to Christendom for my senior year, had a good year, and then I went into a program that I really would recommend if any of you are interested in getting into journalism. It's called the National Journalism Center, and it's run by the Young America's Foundation in DC. And what they do is they basically, they put you at a news outlet. So people there have gone to places like CNN, National Journal, Fox News, other places, and so you get practical experience with that outlet. And you also get to develop a portfolio, further develop your writing portfolio. But then after that, they give you also classes in journalism on the side as well. And so that, a lot of Christendom alumni have gone through that program and have gone into careers in journalism. I can name a few of them. I know Charlie Spearing, who's White House correspondent with Breitbart, he went through there. Beckett Adams is a commentary writer with the Washington Examiner. He went through the National Journalism Center. Peter Jesser Smith, who I work with, he works at the National Catholic Register. He also went through there. And so after I did that, I was kind of on the fence about jumping into reporting. I knew that if I was going to make a career in reporting, it was going to be, I might have to take a job at a small local paper and live in an area that I was very unfamiliar with, work a low wage, try to work my way up. You got to pay your dues, as they say. And so I was really on the fence about kind of going through that challenge. And so instead I took a job where I used to work at the Media Research Center, which was more familiar. I wasn't really happy with it, but I was comfortable there. And that, I think, if I learned anything from that, it's that you don't want to do that, especially, you always want to be moving forward, especially when you get out of school. There might be a temptation to go with what's familiar and what's comfortable. Your first couple years in starting your career, you may have to take a job that is going to get you somewhere. It's going to get you from point A to point B, but it's going to be a real challenge, and you're not sure if you're going to be able to make it on the salary that they're paying you or the stipend. But I think if you're really serious about going a certain route in a career, there's certain doors that you're just going to have to walk through and just hope for the best. And I think it's a win-win situation, because if you find out that a particular career is not for you, you at least know that that door is closed, and that that you can pursue another option. But if you go with what's kind of more familiar and what's comfortable, you may, it's kind of like the road not taken. You might be asking yourself down the road, what might have happened had you gone another route. So anyways, I was 26, and I was kind of, I had been working in my job for about 4 years. I was blogging about cable news. And I knew that's not what I wanted to do, and reporting was one of the things that I'd always kind of wanted to try, but never had really given it a try. And so I reached out to somebody I knew who worked at Catholic News Agency, and I asked them, hey, are they hiring? And she said yes, and so I sent her my resume. And then I followed up with the editors there at Catholic News Agency and said, hey, I'm coming out to Denver, where their headquarters is located. I'm coming out to Denver for a wedding, which I was. I can stop by the office and talk a little bit more about myself and talk a little bit more about the resume I just sent. And they said yes. And so I got an interview with them. It went pretty well. I followed up with them a couple weeks later. We scheduled a follow-up interview, and on the second interview, they offered me the job to be one of the DC correspondents. And definitely what I learned from that was, in order to get the job, I had to be persistent. I had to be the one to kind of reach out to them and say, hey, I'm interested in your company. I would love to talk with you more. And, with a lot of places, you might not get a reply, you might get rejected, and that's okay. Because in the whole job interview process, if you're looking for a different job, it might be a series of no's, but each no will lead you closer to the yes, especially if it's at a job that you were really, really looking for. So, be persistent. If you get rejected, that's okay. Just keep going and just learn from each interview. The more interviews you get, the more experience with interviewing you'll get, the more comfortable you'll be at it. And with each job search, I think it can really bring a wealth of practical information your way. So anyways, what do I do now at Catholic News Agency? So I'm one of 2 DC correspondents, which means that we have an awful lot of ground to cover in the nation's capital. Catholic News Agency is a global Catholic news agency. We're not Catholic News Service. You may have heard of CNS. They're our friendly Catholic competitor, but we're CNA. We're the good guys. So we're, as I said, we're global. So we have bureaus in Denver, in Rome, in South America, in DC. We have, we publish our articles in German, Spanish, Italian. Our English language articles for CNA are read all over the world. So, and for the staff that we have, we cover an awful lot of ground. And so, the Rome Bureau obviously covers Pope Francis and a lot of what he's talking about. In DC, I have to keep track of the State Department, Congress, White House, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. And obviously, I can't report on everything that happens in DC, but I have to basically pick out the stories that I know are going to be good for our Catholic audience, that our audience is going to be interested in, stories that they may not think about, but that I think that they should be interested in. So we cover issues like immigration, religious liberty, the pro-life issues, keep track of pro-life bills that are coming up in Congress. So we'll cover a lot of the news of the day, but from a Catholic perspective. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we try to, we cover the news, but then we try to bring the proper context to the news. What should Catholics know? What about Catholic social teaching? Many Catholics may not be aware of Catholic social teaching. So in my job, I'm kind of drawing a lot on what I learned here at Christendom as a Catholic journalist. We obviously had a lot of classes here on, what does the church have to say about economics, about theology, about Catholic literature, the philosophy of human nature. I feel like a lot of what I learned here. I work in the humanities as a journalist, and liberal arts, you're learning what it means to truly be human. So really, if you're looking to have a career in journalism, liberal arts is fantastic preparation. There's a lot of successful journalists who came from the liberal arts. I can name a few. Bob Woodward, the longtime editor at the Washington Post, he had a degree in literature, I believe. Robert Novak, who was a longtime DC journalist, he was also English literature. Ross Douthat, a columnist for the New York Times. He's definitely one of those must-read columnists. He's a Catholic, very, very good writer. He graduated from Harvard with, I think he had a concentration in history and in literature. So there are a lot of, you don't need to go through a specialized journalism program at a four-year university in order to go into print journalism, at least. As long as you learn how to write AP style, to write as a journalist, you you can bring an awful lot with what you've learned from in your time here at Christendom. So that's kind of in a nutshell what I'm doing every day. I have to keep track again of everything that's going on in DC. I've had a lot of great experiences in my 3 years at CNA. I've covered the visit of Pope Francis to Washington, D.C. I've covered the political conventions, the 2016 election. I was the only person from CNA who went up and covered the presidential debate and the vice presidential debate. And so that just involved a lot of logistics, planning my travel up there, doing Snapchat stories, being active on social media, thinking up interview questions to ask the political surrogates afterward. It's very fast-paced, but that's what I love about it. Writing on deadline, again, as Mr. Clark had pointed out, when you're writing a paper and you have to cram, it's actually can be kind of good preparation for writing on deadline as a journalist. So that's in a nutshell. That's in a nutshell what I do. If I could just have a few more quick points about if you're just looking to even make a career in writing, it doesn't necessarily have to be journalism. I would just say, first off, there's a really good book I would recommend called On Writing Well by William Zinsser. His last name sounds about as fun as his personality comes out in the book, but I think his main point is when you're writing, you really want to be concise and cut out all unnecessary language. Think of the reader when you're writing something. And so anyways, I really recommend that book. That had a lot of influence on my writing and on me trying to improve my writing. Another one would be, when I was a college freshman and I was still trying to figure out if journalism was going to be a good career for me, I emailed the local sports editor at the local newspaper and just asked him a few questions. And he was very kind enough to reply. And one of the things he had told me was just, you want to get published as a writer by reputable outlets. And I think don't be afraid, in whatever career route you're going, to seek out people in different professions that you're considering and just ask, hey, can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to a coffee? Do you have enough time for a 15-minute phone call? I would love to pick your brain about this, this field that you're in. What do you do every day? How do you like it? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the skills that I need? I think that's very good. Take advantage of our alumni network. At least for me, I found that certain Christendom alumni were really, really good at reaching out to me and about potential opportunities and meetings. So I think a lot of the alumni who have gone through here at Christendom, they had a great experience here and they really want to give back to the school, and that's a great way for them to do that. So don't be afraid to reach out to different alumni. We have a good network here. And I think also just think about establishing a beat. When you're a writer, you cover a specific beat, it's kind of your area of expertise. So just focus on what things are you really passionate about, what would you love to write about, and establishing, learning all that you can about that subject, and then just writing and getting published wherever you can about that.